Hello and welcome to the Leaderboard Trophy Tournament of 2025. My last game of the International Championship hasn't finished yet, so in the meantime, we are going to take a look at that tournament as I think it's just too stacked with very, very strong players and it would be a shame to not cover it. Yeah, but what is this Leaderboard Trophy tournament? What is the story behind this? Basically, a year ago or so, there was some discussion about the click rating system, and some players preferred or voiced their sentiment that they would like to have not only a system like the click rating system that basically just measures or predicts outcomes of future games, but also would like to have a system or something that measures success over a year. And that is basically the Through the Ages leaderboard that was built about a year ago or so. And in that, you basically earn points depending on your tournament results. And so it basically measures the most successful players over a year. And Wolves, the organizer of the tournament and also the creator of the Through the Ages leaderboard, has now made a tournament now at the end of the year 2025 where the top 12 players of the Through the Ages leaderboard, so the top 12 successful players of the year, play a tournament in which you basically can earn more points towards that Through the Ages leaderboard. Basically, it works like this. We have 12 players. In the first stage, each player plays one 4-player game, one 3-player game, and a 2-player game against different opponents. You score points according to those numbers that you can see here. And then the top 9 players make it to the next stage. So those points that you can score are counted towards this tournament, but you also score those points basically for the leaderboard. And then in the next stage, each player only plays one game. The player that performed best in the first stage can choose if they want to play a 2-player, a 3-player, or a 4-player game. So one 2-player, one 3-player, and one 4-player game is played with the remaining 9 players in stage 2. And the winner of each of those games will then play in stage 3 in one 3-player game. And in each of those games, you can earn more points towards the leaderboard. And at the end, there will be one player who is on top of the leaderboard after those additional points from this tournament have been added. And that player will be crowned the Player of the Year. So that's certainly a very prestigious award. And yeah. And yeah, obviously, when we have the most successful of players of the year, we have some very very strong players here, some very known names, and we can maybe quickly go through them. We also have a very nice overview here. We have A440, who was qualified as being the world champion. Then we can see here the top players of the leaderboard. On the first position, we have Marta Pecheur, who won in the last year 2 times the Royal League and finished with 3 league medals and made it to the semifinals of the World Championship. We have Ipogi, who won the bronze medal in the World Championship and had 2 medals in International Championship and the Intermezzo Championship. PV4 was Intermezzo Championship and International Championship winner and made it to the semifinals in the World Championship. Saru was the Wimbledon winner, and if you say, wait a minute, you were the Wimbledon winner, because I, of course, won the latest Wimbledon tournament, but that tournament finished earlier than it was predicted. So the tournament that I won basically counts towards the next year of the leaderboard, and the Wimbledon tournament before that was won by Saru. So he is the Wimbledon winner. He has 2 Royal League medals and made it to the semifinals of the World Championship. We have Wolves, the organizer of the tournament, also, who has 2 Intermezzo Championship medals and then had some good performances in some other tournaments. Also made it to the semifinals of the World Championship. Grozz was the best performing player in the Mercurial ladder, won the team championship and has also scored 3 league medals. Danio was one time the international championship winner, has scored a Royal League medal. Mayondor was the international championship winner and the Royal League winner. And then Todd Silence was 2 times the Intermezzo Championship winner and also scored an Intermezzo Championship medal. And I, in the last year, won the Intermezzo Championship one time, so that's where I maybe earned the most points. Then there would have also, Funestus also would have been qualified for this tournament with having 2 international championship medals. Um, but he didn't want to play in this tournament, and so there was one spot for another player open, and that was occupied by Wawrzyniec, who performed best in the sodium ladder in the last year, and is also the highest rated player on the clicker rating, so definitely another very big name to add to this tournament. And with that, we have the 12 players who will now try to gather as many points for the leaderboard to then be at the top at the end. I'm that much behind the leaderboard that I didn't take a close look at it to be honest. I just tried to give my best in every game and didn't think about too much about how many places I can climb the leaderboard, but I think I'm too much behind so that I don't have any real chance, I think, to uh, be on the top of the leaderboard, if I'm not mistaken. I mean, I haven't taken a close look at it, but still, I can maybe try to climb um, some places, and also, of course, it's great to play against such strong opponents, and I, of course, want to try my best to perform as good as possible. And you also basically you can also see the clicker rating of those players here in on this bracket, so we won't take a further look at the clicker rating. It's before the latest update, so now there has already been an update again. Alright, but now without further ado, we are going to take a look at the first 4-player game, which will be against the World Champion of 2024, Martin Pecheur, against Grozz, maybe one of the players who has the best form at the moment, and then also Wawrzyniec, #1 in the click rating. So that will be a high stacked game, and now without further ado, we are going to take a look at that game. Alright, I'm playing in the last position in this game, and first of all we can take a look at the leaders and wonders. And there's already something very interesting to note in H3, I'm not sure if you realize it, but it will also get somewhat relevant later on. In 3 and 4 player games there are 7 different leaders, meaning 5 leaders are not in the game, and in H3 in this game the 5 leaders that are not in the game are actually all of the lab and science leaders. We have no Steve Jobs, no Einstein, no Bill Gates, no Sid Meier, no Marie Curie, so basically no lab synergy at all in H3, which is certainly something very unique and something that you maybe have to play around a little bit. Then we have some wonders. Internet is there together with Pierre. We have the Red Cross, which is interesting. Gandhi and Churchill are there for the military. In H2 we have Suez Canal and James Cook, so there's certainly some big colonization payoff. We also have Watt and the railroad. We have Newton as a strong economic leader, Anthony Gaudi and Darwin as some culture leaders, 2 military action leaders, Robespierre and Napoleon. Also 2 military action leaders in H1 with Joan of Arc and Jan Žižka. Barbarossa can help with the strength. We have both Leonardo and Gutenberg. We have Columbus, who can work now very nicely in just such a game with Suez Canal and James Cook. And then also Michelangelo, potentially together maybe with the St. Peter's Basilica. We have also the 2 science wonders with Universitas and Silk Road, and the Forbidden City is there as well as the Magic Castle. Wawrzyniec is playing in the first position, and he isn't willing to commit to any of those leaders, interestingly, and there are also quite a lot of strong ones coming down the road, to be honest, so he might have a chance to maybe get Boudica, Confucius or Hammurabi at his next turn, and with that he just grabs the rich land here. Martin Pecheur is then just taking Aristotle and the Ridgeland. Maybe that was calculated by Wawrzyniec, who now for certain will get one of Boudica, Confucius and Hammurabi. Also maybe there was a good chance that one of Grozz and me will maybe just take a wonder from the row. That's what Grozz is doing now. He's just securing himself the library, waiting for one of the other leaders that he then maybe can get at his next turn. And then it's my pick. I'm playing in the last position. And I also could just take the Rome roads and maybe the cultural heritage, securing myself a strong wonder. But it's a little bit dangerous. Wawrzyniec and Grozz both don't have a leader. Wawrzyniec maybe could just go for Hammurabi or Confucius, and then Boudica will be discarded. The other one of Confucius, Hammurabi, might be taken by Grozz, and then there's only Alex left, or there could be Caesar revealed, which both wouldn't be that great. And so instead I rather secured myself a strong leader here. There are some interesting wonders that can still be revealed, the pyramids and the Stonehenge. Probably I won't get the Rome roads, but with that one maybe taken by one of the players who don't have a wonder yet, which are Wawrzyniec and Marta Pêcheur. There's a chance that, for example, if both Stonehenge and pyramids are revealed, it should be very likely that I will have a chance to take one of those, and if I don't have a chance to take one of those, then I can maybe still go for the Hanging Gardens if I think that is good for me. And with that, I at the end went for Hammurabi and the cultural heritage here. I certainly could also think about Boudica and frugality or Confucius and frugality, especially with playing the last position. Having Hammurabi can sometimes be somewhat challenging. The thing is, maybe I will end up in a situation where it could be beneficial for me to take a wonder from the 2 civil action area, and then that is just a lot easier to do with Hammurabi, and generally he is probably just the strongest one out of those leaders. I have to be a bit careful, of course, but there's no player who will get Sun Tzu, Caesar, or the Colossus. At least it looks like Caesar could still be revealed. And with that, I was brave enough to take Hammurabi here in the last position. Now it's Wawrzyniec's turn. He has just taken the Ridgeland a turn before, will now get Boudica, very strong leader, and interestingly he is willing to take the Rome roads here for 2 civil actions, which is somewhat expensive, especially because he is willing to delay the mine for that. Could have maybe also just not taken a wonder this turn, but then of course Rome roads and Stonehenge might be taken away, and maybe he values the Rome roads relatively highly, so that he was willing to actually delay the mine here in order to get it. Marta Pêcheur builds the mine, increases his population, and he is also willing to take a wonder for 2 civil actions, the Stonehenge. At least that is somewhat expensive for both of my opponents. I was not unhappy to see that. Of course, those wonders are now taken away from me, and sadly the pyramids weren't revealed. But nonetheless, that is somewhat expensive, and maybe I can be fine with that. Now it's Grozz's turn. He will take Alex, builds a mine, and takes Barbarossa, interestingly. So he also is going for an interesting line. Goes for Alex, a solid leader, not the greatest one, but can be solid, and he doesn't have a lot else to choose from. But with having Alex, of course, you want to get a replacement leader as quickly as possible, and he's just taking one here, Barbarossa, and can maybe at the next turn elect Alex, and then soon go for Barbarossa as soon as he needs to build some military. Now we are at my turn again, and I actually have some very interesting options here. First of all, I will of course elect Hammurabi. There's an engineering genius available for 1 civil action. I have to decide whether I want to go for the Hanging Gardens or not, or whether I want to wait for one of those H1 wonders. When we take a look at those H1 wonders, we have Silk Road, Universitas, Forbidden City, so there are some very interesting wonders to potentially get as the first wonder very early. And it could make it an interesting choice to maybe just skip the Hanging Gardens. There's an early iron as well, interestingly, and thanks to having taken the cultural heritage, I could actually build a mine this turn, a lab at the next turn, and then thanks to the additional science, I'm guaranteed to then already go for that very early iron, so it would be very tempting to go for the iron. But there's also a copy of Knights and Swordsmen. I'm playing in last position as Hammurabi. Grozz has now gone for Alex and Barbarossa, so he certainly could go for a bit more of a military focused game, meaning I maybe also have to be a bit careful. If I just, for example, build a mine now and take the iron, then those 2 military techs will be taken away, and things maybe could actually get somewhat dangerous for me. Also, if I build a mine and take the iron for 3, I would miss out on the engineering genius, which isn't ideal. So despite this early iron being very lucrative or looking very tempting, I decided against taking it here as I was a little bit too worried about my security here. Maybe I should just play it greedily, but I at this point wasn't willing to do it, especially as it would also mean that I miss out on the engineering genius, which could be a very helpful card, so that because the things that I will do is to build a mine here and then take this copy of Knights. I will skip the Hanging Gardens with those interesting H1 wonders, and then if you go for an H1 wonder directly, that can be somewhat expensive, but then having an engineering genius is actually a very big help to maybe get that wonder built relatively quickly, and so I thought it would be somewhat expensive to miss out on it. I don't take the iron for 3 here, but there might be another chance to take an iron. I wouldn't be able to go for it already at the next turn anyway, and I could maybe get an interesting wonder to invest into, maybe a copy of Alchemy. I just thought taking the iron here for 3 at the cost of not getting the engineering genius, of missing out on the first military tax isn't worth it, and so at the end that was my choice here, taking the engineering genius and making sure that I have already a military technology in hand. I then draw a card, the raid. Wawrzyniec increases his population, builds the second lab, is delaying the mine for now, because he can now take the iron for 2 civil actions and can maybe at some point even build an iron mine directly. Thanks to the additional science from Boudica, he can already develop the iron at the next turn. Otabeshur builds the second lab, elects Aristotle, and then takes a copy of alchemy. Could have taken a copy of iron. Maybe I will actually get now the chance to take that, but then he would either have to miss out on building the lab or electing Aristotle, so he just goes with the alchemy here. Now it's Grozz's turn. He will go for Alex, increases his population, takes the swordsman, has also a military tech in hand, especially with Barbarossa. I think that's very worthwhile, and then just builds the second lab, meaning that I ended up being very happy with my decision of the last turn, because now I have actually a chance to take an iron for 2 civil actions, and it gets even better. My decision of skipping the Hanging Gardens also gets rewarded here, because an early Universitas is coming down the row. Now none of my opponents can take it away, so I can take the iron this turn, maybe start some iron production, and afterwards build the Universitas. Going for an iron build into Universitas is most of the times very strong, and so I was very happy how the cards aligned themselves here for me. And this turn was basically almost scripted, I would say. I can increase my population, I take the iron for certain, I build the second lab, and then I have a full hand, and I just play the cultural heritage here. Building the lab and playing that card allows me to for certain already go for the iron at the next turn, so I didn't want to skip the lab here, for example. I could have maybe taken a leader, Leonardo or Michelangelo, maybe both could be interesting in my position, but with having no HA wonder, I can take the Universitas cheaply anyway, and so Michelangelo didn't feel too great, and so I think just going for that lab, making sure that I can go for the iron at the next turn is just, I think, the best to do here, and then I can at the next turn go for the Universitas. I draw the developed territory. That could be an interesting draw, because Columbus is coming down the row, and Columbus is a very nice transitional leader. Suez Canal and Cook are in the game. Wawrzyniec also goes for some early iron build here. He could even build a mine directly, has taken a resource from Boudica, and then will go for the masonry in Michelangelo. So he is setting up for a Michelangelo game here, and he has already some strong ingredients for that. Has the iron, has the masonry, and also the Rome roads will produce him some additional resources. So certainly a lot of potential for a strong Michelangelo game here. Otabeshur gets the Code of Laws for 1 civil actions. That's of course something that you dream of when you go for Aristotle. He then goes for the alchemy, then for Leonardo, goes for an upgrade, and no, he didn't make a turn order mistake here. Of course, he could have developed the alchemy with Leonardo, scoring 1 more resource, but that one resource would have actually scored or led to corruption to him, so he willingly decided against that and only afterwards selected Leonardo to at least still get the 1+1 science bonus, which allows him to develop the Code of Laws at the next turn, even when building no step of the Stonehenge. Also, he reveals a fighting band tactic. Grozz uses Alex, takes the alchemy, increases his population, and then goes for 1 alchemy upgrade, starting some economy upgrades. Then this turn I can go for the iron, I can go for an upgrade, I certainly want to go for the Universitas. There are some other interesting wonders, but with having gone for an iron build, I do think the Universitas is just the best and is also available the cheapest. And after doing that, I have still 2 civil actions left with Hammurabi, and with having drawn the developed territory, with having Hammurabi, who I hopefully can just keep until the end of the age, it would only be awkward if there's some military pressure going on, then I can elect Columbus as a nice transitional leader and have a colony for the Suez Canal. I think it's just too strong to go for Columbus here, and then with my last civil action, it's the question if I want to increase my population or take another card, maybe saving up even more food with not going into consumption early. And I think that's a close call. Both would be fine, I think. At the end, I decided to take the irrigation here. Not necessarily to go for it in the next few turns, but it can just be not bad to maybe have a copy of that in hand, to not be too dependent on the selective breedings in H2, just being able to maybe upgrade something if I don't have anything better to do, and I also stay out of consumption even longer. There's been no development revealed. So far, the players haven't really been wanting to push a lot. Wawrzyniec doesn't have a free population. Matapesher doesn't have a free population. So it could be that those are also not really wanting to seed, or if they do seed and there's a development of religion revealed, at least they also miss out on it. And with that, I was willing to take the risk of missing out on such developments and instead made sure to even save up more food. I draw the good harvest, maybe a seedable event, especially with having taken the irrigation. Wawrzyniec goes for one more iron upgrade, increases his population, I think has taken a science from Boudica, increases his population again, and then develops the masonry so that potentially the next turn he can just finish the Rome roads, elect Michelangelo, and maybe take one of those wonders that is coming down the road. Matapesher increases his population 2 times, builds a warrior to get a bit stronger, develops the code of laws. I guess building that warrior might have also have to do something with getting out of corruption, and then he is interestingly willing to take the knights for 2, but he also has the tactic for that, the phalanx tactic, which he is willing to reveal here, maybe showing that he has some cards in hand where he puts that he values keeping. Sadly, I do get a bit unlucky here. The first event revealed is the development of religion. I mean, I do get punished for my decision also, but sadly now Wawrzyniec and Matapesher both already had a chance to increase their population, while I didn't, so I will now be the only one who misses out on a true religion, which is certainly not ideal. Grozz takes this copy of Urban Growth, takes a copy of Code of Laws, elects Barbarossa, and then increases his population once, maybe wanting to have one more free population before he starts maybe using Barbarossa to get more population into the military, saves up his resources so that he can maybe finish the library at the next turn. Now it's my turn, I increase my population, I upgrade one mine, that gets me out of corruption. I increase my population again, I just want to use some civil actions in my civilization because they are not the most interesting cards on the row for me, and I also have some hand space issues here. I make space in my hand with using the engineering genius on the Universitas. I'm sadly missing one resource to finish it at the next turn, but it's certainly possible that I could get help from the developments here. I still have one civil action left with Hammurabi. And I basically can only spend that civil action with taking a card. And here it was the decision between the bread and circuses, which has somewhat strong synergies this game, especially I have missed out on a free religion, so I won't be getting a free religion. And then with bread and circuses I could maybe go for Darwin, could maybe go for Pierre. Bread and circuses could certainly be worth picking here. The problem is I have already 2 technologies in hand, which in the knights I can't develop at the next turn. Both irrigation and bread and circuses I maybe don't necessarily want to commit to already at the next turn, and because of that I decided against the bread and circuses here and instead just went with this copy of rich land, which I can use for certain if I want to at the next turn with going for an iron upgrade. If a 2 resource development should be revealed before my next turn, then I can also use this rich land and finish the Universitas plus going for an iron upgrade, which otherwise wouldn't be possible, so it could potentially also help me to get my to boost my economy even more, and then I can just easily get it out of my hands so that I can also maybe take some new cards with the additional civil actions that I'm having thanks to Hammurabi. I keep the 2 events that I'm having and I draw a colonization card. It's certainly nice to have. Wawrzyniec this turn will go for Michelangelo, has scored another resource with Boudica interestingly, finishes the Rome roads, takes the Himeji castle, and thanks to having scored that resource he at the next turn has the option to just finish the Himeji castle if he needs to. He could have also gone for the Silk Road or the St. Peter's Basilica, but St. Peter's Basilica would have cost an additional civil action, and he doesn't have any military tech yet, not the most population, so I do think just having that for defense purposes is probably the best choice here. He then plays his own copy of Fighting Band. Matapesher seeds and opens the development of crafts. I was happy to see that because that will allow me to finish the Universitas and thanks to Richland also go for one more iron upgrade at my next turn. Matapesher goes for another lab upgrade, is now already at 5 science production and has the science of the Stonehenge. So now he basically just needs to find more stuff that he wants to invest into with the science that he has, and he starts by taking this cartography, and we have seen that there is some colonization payoff in H2, so it's certainly not bad having that card available, and especially if he maybe has already drawn some colonies. Grozz seeds and the development of politics is revealed. He goes for the Code of Laws, goes for another lab upgrade, uses Barbarossa to build a warrior, reveals the Legion tactic, but still, thanks to the development of crafts, has enough resource to just finish the library, also going up to 5 science production. Now it is my turn. I don't really want to push and accelerate the deck here, but what I can try is offering the Naval Trade Agreement. However, I didn't really want to offer it to a player who maybe can actually benefit from it a lot. I didn't want to give it to Martin Pescher, who already has the cartography, and Grozz with Barbarossa could also benefit very heavily from colonies, so I just offered it to Wawrzyniec. We have seen in the last international game that those blue tokens can be very viable. Maybe I should have been actually willing to offer it to Martin Pescher or Grozz, but there is a Suez Canal in the game, and I might actually be in a position to go for that Suez Canal with getting already one colony with Columbus, so I didn't want to make it that one player is maybe very heavily competing against the Suez Canal, offered it to Wawrzyniec, but the pact gets rejected here. Thanks to the development of crafts, I can finish the Universitas this turn, use the rich land to go for one more iron upgrade, then I have 2 civil actions left. I could take one card in hand, for example the Breakthrough, maybe the Monarchy, but it's relatively late for the Monarchy, and taking those cards for 2 civil actions would be not the greatest. I have another chance to take the Bread and Circuses here, but then I again have a full hand. I could elect Columbus already, but I don't really need to elect him already this turn. And I have some strong production and want to invest the production into something, and with that I thought it is not bad to just go for the St. Peter's Basilica here. That will help me with the happy faces. There is some theater synergy, especially in H3, so maybe just going for some theaters together with the St. Peter's Basilica as a happy face solution could be viable. I could have even not gone for the... No, I could have not. I just thought for a moment that I could have not gone for that iron upgrade and instead having taken the drama, but for that I again would have to elect Columbus because I still would have the rich land in hand, so I don't have a theater technology yet, but I can maybe hope to get a copy of Opera at some point. And yeah, I just think with my strong production, getting another wonder here is not bad. And also a nice way to invest my civil actions. I draw the Pestilence, Wawrzyniec seeds, opens the development of agriculture, increases his population. Interestingly, builds a 4th iron mine here, so he is really going for some very big production. Wants to be in a position to maybe take as many wonders from H2 as he pleases, together with that masonry. Has certainly some strong potential, but is of course also somewhat greedy. It's not clear how nicely he will be able to spend those resources, and it's also not clear how much he maybe would need the population in the military, but he has the magic castle to defend himself, and with that is maybe willing to go for that risk. Also builds a warrior for now to get a bit stronger, takes the Breakthrough as he really needs some science here. Martin seeds, opens the development of planning. The options for that are development of science, settlement and trade routes. He chooses to go for the development of settlement. He finishes the Stonehenge, is now at 15 science actually, develops the knight, scoring a resource with Leonardo da Vinci, builds one going up to 7 strength, and yeah, I think he has just too much science here, needs to invest it, goes for the monarchy, scoring another resource with Leonardo, increasing his population, and then taking the frugality, which maybe could allow him to at some point get another population going. Then it's Grozz's turn, and he offers me an open borders agreement, which I was extremely happy to see. Of course, it also helps him a lot, so maybe he just wanted to make sure that it gets accepted. He is Barbarossa, the 3rd military action is very helpful for him, but I certainly was a bit concerned with Martin Pescher going up to 7 strength, that it could be a bit awkward for me to actually get strong enough to not be in somewhat big danger. And so with the additional military action it will be helpful, but of course Grozz also might get somewhat strong, and I have to be careful to not be the target of an aggression from him at the end, who would get the +2 bonus from the pact. Grozz takes the Bread and Circuses, the Patriotism and the Irrigation in hand. Goes for another Swordsman, is now at 8 strength. As you can see, I seed at my turn, and it has something to do with the remaining developments. Especially the development of warfare would be quite helpful for me in this position, so I was kind of hoping to maybe get that, but also the other developments would be fine to get. And so I seed the Pestilence into the deck, also thinking that I will be somewhat nicely prepared for that. And there is indeed the development of warfare, so I do get a bit lucky here. That is quite helpful for me, getting a warrior without needing to spend a military action. That allows me now to take that free warrior and build a knight and copy the tactic with using all of my military actions. Also, as you can see here, I choose to go for the development of science with the development of planning. Normally, maybe the development of settlement is even more lucrative, especially with an event like the pestilence coming, but I think the development of science gives me one benefit here, and that is that after building that knight and copying the tactics so that I go up to 7 strength, I have now just enough science left to also go for the warfare. Maybe I don't need the warfare as much, as I already have the open borders agreement now, but if I just end my turn like that, then Grozz could maybe just try an aggression against me and I would need to discard my colony if I need to defend it, so already that could be somewhat annoying, and just having a bit more strength and a bit more draws during H2 is certainly not bad. And also, if I elect Columbus right now, I would only be able to use the civil action, while if I now develop the warfare, I then have a free military action left that I then can again use to elect Columbus to again have a civil action left, so I can basically develop the warfare here without paying a civil action cost, basically only sacrificing the one draw that I would get thanks to the additional military action, which was another reason why I thought it could be strong for me to go for that warfare, as it's civil action wise relatively cheap to invest into. And then I have one civil action left. I could grab the alchemy here, I could start investing into it soon, but I have some happy face issues also relatively soon, so I need to finish the St. Peter's Basilica first, and then I thought I rather just want to wait for H2 upgrades or H2 economy cards that I want to upgrade into, especially because my science production is already fine. It's not that I urgently need to fix it, and so instead of taking the alchemy, I just build a step of the St. Peter's Basilica, which allows me to finish it and still have 2 civil actions left at the next turn. Now it's Wawrzyniec's turn. He takes the alchemy in hand, goes for an upgrade, and thanks to the masonry still has 9 resources left, which he can use to finish the Meiji Castle here. With that is at 6 strength, so isn't in danger of any aggression, especially with the castle, but is the weakest for events. Martyr Seeds, there's no strength event revealed yet. Instead a colony. I didn't want to be in danger of an aggression, so I just passed, even though I really would have liked, of course, to win another colony to be prepared for a Suez Canal. But here Martyr is able to win it, wins it for a warrior and 2 cards, so very cheaply, and that's certainly strong for him. All of those resources will also allow him now to go for more iron upgrades, so that wealthy territory is really boosting his economy here. Goes for 2 iron upgrades, could even go for a third, but instead decided to use the frugality here to increase his population and then build another knight, making him the strongest, but also making it that he can maybe bid on a potential another colony without losing his tactic value. With that, H1 ends and H2 starts. And one question that I had to... Oh, first of all, Grozz has his turn. It's not my turn yet. Grozz seeds and opens the barbarians. Wawrzyniec has the most culture. Let's see if it was close. Oh, it was actually very close, but yeah, the culture production from the Meiji Castle turned out to be somewhat bad for him here, because he actually loses a population now, and it could end up being somewhat bad for him. He is committed to a 4th mine, and another event that I've seeded into the deck is the pestilence, so that could really be somewhat annoying for him, the population loss that he has to suffer here. Grozz starts going for the irrigation, maybe he can go for more Barbarossa activations at some point, plays the patriotism, uses that to go for some more upgrades, making him the strongest again, and then has 2 civil actions left, which he will use to take the rich land and the cultural heritage. Now we are at my turn, and one question that I had to answer here is whether I want to use Columbus already, or if I want to wait a little bit and see if I maybe can get a stronger colony from H2. And normally it would be a position where I would be somewhat inclined to wait for a stronger colony. I can fix my uprising issues with finishing the St. Peter's Basilica. But there was one reason why I at the end went with just using Columbus already. And that is that after finishing the St. Peter's Basilica, I have 2 civil actions left. I have only 4 civil actions, so I'm in a position where I have to be very careful about using my civil actions effectively. And if I don't use Columbus now, I don't have the option to increase my population, so now I have a way to already spend a civil action a turn earlier that I then don't need to spend later on and can maybe focus on getting some important stuff going. And the cards that I could take here, Rich Latin Reserves for 2 civil actions, wouldn't really be that great. Just taking one of those cards for 2 civil actions wouldn't really be that great. I don't want to go for late Monarchy if I have a Warfare, which makes it that I'm both set up for Common and Republic. And so I thought in this position it's actually very viable or very valuable that getting the colony gives me the option to already spend a civil action, so that I have to only spend 1 civil action on taking some cards that I actually don't need that much. I decided to go with the Richland here. It's not a clear choice, because I maybe want to wait a little bit to see if I get a chance to get a selective breeding, but depending on what I have to do, I could also just decide to go for irrigation relatively soon, and it is just a more efficient card. I'm on low civil action, so I have to be careful, but if it stays in my hand for longer, maybe it could create some hand space issues. Maybe just being able to play the reserves and get it out of my hand could be viable, but for now I have still some hand space, and as said, maybe I will just go for the irrigation relatively soon. I could have even already spent a civil action to develop it, but I didn't like to do that because I want to stay open to go into Republic at the next turn in case it should be in the row. I draw some cards here, and interesting draws. No colony, otherwise I would have been maybe unhappy about my decision with Columbus. But a war and a classic army. If I get Swordsman or Rifleman, this classic army could end up being a very interesting card. Wawrzyniec takes the Conmon here. Had maybe an interesting choice, because he could have also grabbed a Harvard College here, but he is somewhat behind in strength, low in civil action, so maybe he didn't want to take the risk of playing without a government form for longer, especially because other players are also waiting for a government form, and he has enough science to develop that government form at the next turn. Can maybe hope to get other wonders with Michelangelo. Montapecheur seeds, opens the Crusades. Some cultures transferred from Wawrzyniec to Grozz, and Montapecheur is now going for the Harvard College. Has already a lot of science production and also had the science of the Stonehenge, but it's just going for even more science. Takes the architecture, interestingly dispense the warrior in order to build a knight, also goes for the cartography, has the heavy cavalry tactic, making him the strongest, can maybe send a warrior away if there's a colony coming at some point with the cartography, and at the next turn he has 10 resources, but if he develops the architecture he's at 11, which is just enough to finish the Harvard College, so he can really boost to science production even more at the next turn if he would like to. Now it's Grozz's turn. He seeds, and Pestilence is revealed. He has a free population, however losing that population causes him some uprising issues. He can fix those uprising issues by using Barbarossa to make a warrior and then disband it immediately, so that is somewhat fine, but it's still annoying for him, because the one resource that he needed to spend on that warrior makes the difference between him being able to go for that coal or not. If the Pestilence wouldn't have been revealed, he could have maybe just gone for a coal upgrade with the rich land, which would be quite strong for him. Now he has to delay the coal by another turn in order to fix his uprising, so the Pestilence has done some damage to him, and especially Wawrzyniec, who hasn't a free population and has already lost one to the Barbarians, could get hit quite heavily by the Pestilence, and also Montapecheur doesn't have a free population, so I was quite happy how that Pestilence worked out for me. And yeah, Grozz just takes Urban Growth Knights and then takes and develops the coal, and could have just easily upgraded a mine instead of taking the Urban Growth here, so certainly some damage done for him by the Pestilence. It's my turn now. I'm not the weakest, and so I was willing to seed here, and I thought I might have chances to be the strongest when the international negotiations will be revealed, because I will go for a turn now that will help me being stronger at a later point, so I was willing to push that event into the deck. And the Reign of Terror is revealed. Now it's starting to get really rough for Wawrzyniec. The third population that he will lose, he has actually to destroy 2 things because of the 2 population losses, and has to play with a very low population from then on, so that certainly is adding up here and putting him in an awkward position. As you can see, I decided to just take the railroad here. It wasn't a completely clear call, because I have the classic army tactic, and taking the railroad means that I will take neither swordsman nor rifleman, and it was certainly an option to maybe just go for the rifleman here, maybe go for the swordsman and then take the scientific method or something. There's Newton in the game, I could maybe go for some strong science production, even though, as we saw at the beginning, there's not a big payoff for that in age 3. And yeah, so that is not clear. but I can finish it at the next turn. I don't necessarily need to increase my science production here. I do think the strength from the railroad will be very helpful. It's generally, I think, a strong wonder. And even though it's a 4-player game, there are also some high drafting reasons involved here, because for Wawrzyniec, who has Michelangelo, the masonry, needs some strength desperately. That would just be the perfect solution for him. He could just take and finish it at the next turn, boosting his position, and that could just make a very big difference for him. And so I'm also really hurting one player here. Of course, that shouldn't be the biggest argument in a 4-player game, but if it's such a big difference, and if I think that play is strong for myself anyway, I do think then it's a fair call to just go for that. And so I go for the railroad. It's a big civil action cost. I need all of my civil actions to take it here, and if I want to finish it already the next turn, I again will need all of my civil actions, but I invest into something very useful. The strength will be useful, the additional production will be useful, and yeah, so I was thinking at the end it might be worth it. And while there's the chance that I might miss out on the rifleman, at least I have the 5 additional strength from the railroad, so it might not be too bad if I should miss out on that. I draw some cards here, another war, also the promise of military protection. Wawrzyniec has had to destroy 2 things. Let's see what he destroyed. He destroyed an iron mine, so that certainly hurts, and an HA temple, meaning after increasing his population, he doesn't have an uprising issue. Uses that to maybe make a transition into team sports. Takes the rifleman in hand, increases his population, but has corruption this turn and has to again wait to get an H2 wonder. Martin Pêcheur seeds, opens the uncertain borders, so another event that will hit Wawrzyniec. Martin Pêcheur gets an additional yellow token that will be extremely useful for him. Now he can increase his population another time. Now the frugality that he took earlier will actually be very useful. And then he will, as we mentioned it already at the last turn, develop the architecture, which gives him the resource to be able to finish the Harvard College, going up to 8 science production. I think he already scored a lot of resources with Leonardo. Can use the Harvard College immediately to take that efficient upgrade, using it to get that upgrade done more quickly. So he can finish the Harvard College without the cost of delaying the mine here. And then he gets another strong 2 yellow cards, so I think a very clean turn by him here. Grozz takes the navigation, maybe wants to compete against potential colonies that maybe Martin has seeded, or maybe Grozz has seeded some himself. There is actually a Suez Canal coming down the road. Let's see which player will end up getting that. And then he plays the cultural heritage. Can this turn finally go for those coal upgrades? It's my turn. I don't really want to push the terrorism, and so I offer the promise of military protection to Grozz. And I wanted to get the additional strength. Of course, it costs me some culture reduction, but I know that the international negotiations are coming, and I know that I have 2 wars in hand. And of course, there's always the danger that Grozz might cancel it if I maybe used it to go for a war against another player, but maybe he has something different to do with his politics phase, and I can maybe plan for a war where losing the 4 strength would still be enough for me to win it. So there's certainly a chance that it could make me a lot more threatening for one of those war technologies, especially if I should maybe still get a chance to take a copy of Rifleman. And so I thought a 4 additional strength might be useful here. And at the end I just offered it to Grozz. I don't remember my exact reasoning. I think maybe because I thought that maybe Martin Pêcheur and Wawrzyniec are the most likely targets in case I should actually go for one of those wars. And then as you can see, this turn I just finished the railroad, get my strength up, get my production going. It again means missing out on some cards. Maybe the journalism could be useful, but for now my population is relatively low. I could have taken some military techs like cannons and cavalrymen, but I have the classic army tactic and for now a very solid amount of strength. And so I just wanted to finish that railroad, get it out of the way, get my civil action spent, and from now on I'm just really waiting for a government form, which would give me another big boost, and then I thought I could actually have a very fine position here. I draw some cards. Now I would have gotten a strong colony for Columbus, but I would have needed to wait quite a bit, so think it was fine how I played it. Wawrzyniec builds the team sports, which also actually boosts his culture production a bit with Michelangelo, also helps him with the strength. He is then taking the Suez Canal, maybe has drawn one from H2, and with having Michelangelo, the masonry and big production, that might already be reason enough to just go for the Suez Canal here, and then to get out of corruption and maybe also to get a bit more strength, he is building a warrior here. Martin Pêcheur seeds opens the border conflict, so me being the strongest already pays off. I would have been the strongest without the pact, so the pact isn't helping here, but the railroad is certainly helping. Martin Pêcheur goes for the cavalryman, takes the wave of nationalism, the cannons, the organized religion, so again gets a lot of strong cards for one civil action, and then is interestingly using the wave that he took with the Harvard College in order to go for some upgrades here. And generally, that he is willing to go for those upgrades could mean that he has the Hussars tactic. What it also could mean is that maybe there is a card coming where it could be worthwhile to be one of the two strongest, call to arms, raiders, or maybe especially the foray. It could be a hint that one of those cards could be in there. Or he maybe has just drawn the Hussars tactic. Grozz goes for Napoleon, maybe wants to get a bit stronger, can use Barbarossa one more time, switches to Napoleon, who for now is only giving him 2 strength, but maybe quite some potential for later turns. He then is going for the Bread and Circuses, so is now tied with me for the strongest, and if I don't increase my strength at the next turn, he could maybe remain the strongest after my turn. It is my turn, and to be honest, I don't remember exactly how the situation was with my politics phase, because at some point during the time I think I really thought about declaring war against Wawrzyniec. I'm not sure if it was at that point or if it maybe was already before. However, I came to the conclusion that it was too risky at the time when I thought about it, and because Wawrzyniec, I think if I remember correctly, could already tie if he sacrifices, and it would be annoying for him, but there would also be some chances that I would lose the war. So I thought about wars, of course, with the strength that I'm having, and I'm not sure what exactly the point was, as the game is already a little bit ago, where I thought the most about the wars, but I decided against going for war, and I then just played the Independence Declaration into the deck, as I'm the strongest at the moment. Sadly, no strength event is revealed, instead the knowledge of the ancients, giving all of the players even more science. I have quite a lot of science saved up, and with that I do think it's a very good call here to go for the justice system, going at least up to 5 civil actions, and as soon as I get a government form, I will have a very solid amount of civil actions to work with. So I develop it, and then I still have 3 civil actions left. I think the opera is a good pick here, because together with the St. Peter's Basilica it can serve as a happy face solution, and there's a lot of theaters in GNH3. Basically only the Hollywood is missing, which is of course one big payoff card that is missing. Getting a breakthrough for one civil action I think is just very strong. I build another knight, using my military action, staying the strongest, as there might be some other strength events coming, even though uncertain borders and border conflict are already out, or crusades as well, so maybe being the strongest doesn't make that much actually here. Actually nothing, at least for the H1 events. There's maybe a chance that the international negotiations could already be revealed before my next turn. So I built that knight, and I could potentially take another card like the Urban Growth, but I just didn't like it that much. The alternative that I'm going for I also don't like too much, but at the end I just went with it. I developed the irrigation here. Just being civil action efficient. All of the selective breedings are still in the deck. Grozz has already some irrigations, but the other players are certainly competing for those. I still need a government form, I still need an H2 leader. I might not be in a position to take the selective breeding for expensive, so I rather just develop the irrigation that I already have in hand, and that I can maybe just upgrade quickly in addition to going for a government form and loading up my hand even further with going for the urban growth, then actually having a full hand, so making it more difficult to go for a government form if it should be in the row, maybe leading to me needing to develop the irrigation anyway. I thought it might just be better to commit to it. I still have enough science to go for either Republic or Conmon at the next turn. I actually draw even more aggressive cards, so Vlada certainly wants to push me into a specific direction here. Wawrzyniec seeds, End of Ray is indeed in the deck, but Martin Pêcheur, despite going for this cavalryman, is not a part of it. Instead, I'm and Grozz are participating on that event. Wawrzyniec finishes the Suez Canal, Gets the vast territory too, so that will certainly help him with the population. Can then take the Gremlin, so finally some nice Michelangelo action for him. He could even, if he would like to, just finish the Gremlin, so he could go for a turn where he finishes 2 wonders in 1 turn, which is certainly something unique. But he decides against it. He wants to go for Newton here. Elects him, gets more science production, gets some civil actions. I think Newton is a strong pick for him here. He develops the cavalryman, he wants to get a bit stronger, and then increases his population, takes the strategy. Marta Pêcheur seats, opens the strategic territory. I am actually just pass here. I don't have any cards. I won't win it against those big colonization forces, so I just passed here. And at the end, Grozz is able to win it for just a swordsman, so that's not bad, but the Suez Canal at that point is already gone and taken by Wawrzyniec. Marta Pêcheur takes James Watt in hand, takes Frugality, another Frugality, uses the Frugality immediately with the Harvard College, builds a cavalryman, goes for an upgrade, gets out of corruption like that, and then switches to James Watt and takes the journalism in hand. Actually, all of the selective breedings are now coming down the row in one row. Grozz is increasing his population, goes for the knights. I thought maybe he will go for that conmon, but the thing is there are still 3 government forms left, so he has a good chance to just get one for cheaper at the next turn, and it seems like he wants to get those knights developed before the age ends. The cavalrymen are gone, looking like he might have a tactic in hand where he needs those knights, or he just wants to get stronger with Napoleon, getting now an additional +2 because he has another different unit type, and then instead of just grabbing the conmon, he just grabs a lot of yellow cards, which I think is the correct decision here. Now it's my turn, I don't have an event, I will go for the conmon this turn, meaning I have some excess military action, so I decided to just use that raid on Wawrzyniec. He needs to discard some colonization cards now. And now finally I can go for a leader for my own. It took quite a while, it's certainly not ideal when you have Columbus. I also didn't get the Suez Canal, so in H2 it didn't work that well with Columbus. But now I finally can go for Darwin. I have no arenas, but I have St. Peter's Basilica plus Opera to fix my happy faces, which works very well with Darwin. And I can use him immediately to take some cards for cheaper on the row. I can elect him, take the conmon, develop the conmon, take the cannons, because at this point I don't know whether I get a rifleman, and I thought it might just be a lot safer to have the cannons in hand, so that I'm also prepared for other tactics. And I again can take it for only 1 civil action with Darwin. And then I have 2 civil actions left. I use the rich land before I lose it to go for 1 farm upgrade, and then I just go for another farm upgrade, because when I lose now 2 yellow tokens, that 1 additional food that I get through my last upgrade actually makes the difference between being able to increase my population an additional time at the next turn or not. And so I think this turn was somewhat clear for me at the end. And sadly I'm at the moment not the strongest any longer. Also I was really hoping to maybe get a shot at the 2nd copy of Rifleman. But as we are entering H3 now, we can maybe take a look at the overview to see how the overall situation is. Culture-wise, the players are relatively close, only 8 culture difference between the culture leader and the player with the lowest culture. Economy-wise, I think it's also not that clear. I was somewhat happy about my position now. I have 7 civil actions, even more with Darwin. I have a lot of resource production, and I have some solid culture production. I have the opera that I need to fix my happy faces now, but that will also score me even more culture, so I might be in a position to maybe generate a little bit of a culture lead, but I also have some weaknesses. I have a solid amount of science saved up, but when I invest into the opera and maybe something else, I will be somewhat low in science, so that could be a bottleneck. And then also I have gone for those irrigations very late. I have 1 additional yellow token, but not more, meaning that I might be somewhat slow in how quickly I will get my population out, so I might not have the most population to work with. But I thought I had a fine position to play, but the other players are also not bad. Grozz will get a government form, will get a big boost to his civil actions, has lots of strong yellow cards in hand, will maybe go for 2 more coal upgrades, and then has 9 resource production, which is quite strong. Has also the strength lead for now. Marta Pêcheur has not the most civil actions, but has tons of science after having gone for that very heavy science play, after having invested into the Harvard College despite having Leonardo plus Stonehenge. But that amount of science means that he, as soon as the first H3 government form is in a row, he can just take it improve his civil actions, and with James Watt he also has the potential to get an oil, to get mechanized agriculture, so that gives him some big potential, but if he gets a bit unlucky with the cards, then his not so many civil actions maybe could get a bit of a problem for him. And then we have Wawrzyniec, who certainly suffered some big blows from the event deck, but will now get a Gremlin, has Newton, has the ability to go into some military attacks, Dimichi Castle to protect himself, can maybe get into selective breeding. So he also has a perfectly fine position actually, and overall I would say it's relatively close, and it's hard to say who actually has the strongest position. Age 3 starts. Wawrzyniec builds a cavalryman, takes the selective breeding, develops it, goes for an upgrade, takes the patriotism and the reserves. Matapesher goes for the selective breeding. There's actually a mechanized agriculture coming down the row, but it looks like he just wants to go for that, especially because there's also an early oil revealed for him, which he decides to just grab here. Probably the right call. It's so early, will give him a lot of potential, and then he just uses his other actions to get his selective breeding going. Which is somewhat interesting. He could have just gone for some oil upgrades this turn, but then this copy might be taken away and he might be stuck on low population, so he maybe didn't want to risk that. Grozz seeds and opens the refugees. Sadly, I'm not the strongest any longer, so I won't profit from that, and probably also not from the international negotiations. Wawrzyniec will lose another population, so he is getting hit by all of the events that cause a population loss at that point. Grozz goes for the Republic, develops it, goes for one coal upgrade, takes the cannons, the architecture, goes for another coal upgrade, and then plays the revolutionary idea. So now his position has very much improved, which was also visible already, but now we see it. He has lots of actions and very strong production now. Now it's my turn. It was not a clear call if I should seed here or not, and it depends a lot on what turn I'm going for here, and what turn I'm going for here was also really unclear. Because I have some options here. First I thought I just want to go for an opera, build one, increase my population, maybe take a copy of rifleman or modern infantry. Then I thought about investing into modern infantry or rifleman, getting stronger, being prepared for the international negotiations, in which case I would probably not see it. But both of those plays, while they would be fine, I also felt like it's not ideal because I'm getting really low on my science here, and there is actually an option to improve my science production, and that is the computers. I don't necessarily need to build an opera to fix my happy faces. I can also just increase my population 2 times, which of course leaves me somewhat vulnerable to potential happy face related events. But I have the option here to maybe just invest into computers immediately. I thought about options where I go either into opera or into those units and just take the computers with the plan of investing into it at the next turn, but I think getting some upgrades done already this turn is just very, very strong. But then on the other hand again, we remember that sadly that game is a game without any lab synergy. There's also no spaceflight, only for the internet maybe the labs help. There's also no Manhattan Project. So because of that, I was really thinking, is it really worth it to go for computers? But it is very early. I have a lot of resources to invest into. I'm low in population, meaning just upgrading something is a very strong option for me. And I do think getting the science production going earlier will be of some help for me. And with that, I decided to go into computers. But at that point, of course, I was quite unhappy that, unfortunately, in this position where it's just so lucrative for me to go into early computers, there's no payoff at all in age 3, but I still decide to go for it because if it's that early, I think it's also worth it just for the pure economical value and of course for impact preparation. And with having the plan of going into computers and not going stronger anyway, I at the end was willing to push the popularization of science into the deck. The event revealed is now the international negotiations. I will let Wawrzyniec pay resources to Grozz. I wasn't certain about it. I also thought about letting Wawrzyniec pay science, which I think would hurt him a little bit more, but would help Grozz maybe a little bit more. I think the additional resources don't make a very big difference for him, especially with him being a low population. It could even be somewhat difficult for him to spend those actually. And it's close, but I thought Grozz has probably the better position, and I was still somewhat confident in my position, so I thought maybe I rather want to do something with the international negotiations that helps Grozz less and maybe also hurts Wawrzyniec less, as I was thinking maybe I will rather compete with Grozz as with Wawrzyniec, but it's very close and the game can still go either way, but I think that was my reasoning at the end. And paying the resources is still somewhat annoying for Wawrzyniec. If he wants to finish the Gremlin, he has no to play the reserves. Maybe he actually would like to play the reserves rather for food, for example. He maybe still wants to build a second farm, some military units, so there's a lot of stuff that he probably will still like to build, and with losing the resource, that certainly gets tougher for him. So at the end I thought that should probably be the best choice. If I want to go into computers, I basically have to increase my population 2 times to fix my uprising issue. And then I had to, again, one big decision to make, because I can go for computers, I can go for an upgrade, and then the question is, do I play it greedily here? Do I just go for a second upgrade, which gives me another +4 science? Or do I play it safe and take either a copy of Rifleman or a copy of Modern Infantry here? My first instinct was to just play it greedily here. The Modern Infantry might not be taken away by my opponents, but it could certainly be taken away. And the thing is, I'm still having that +4 strength from the promise of military protection that might get cancelled at any time. Grozz has Napoleon, he might have a tactic to work with. He made sure to go into knights. I don't know that he can't have the classic army and the conquistadors, but he might have something like Napoleonic army or mobile artillery. And he could have certainly have some strength potential. And I at the end thought it's maybe a bit too greedy to just upgrade the second lab here, and instead I should maybe rather take a military tech. And as I don't have the most population but a lot of resources, I think the modern infantry is the better choice than the rifleman here, especially I can take it for the same amount of civil actions thanks to Darwin. Darwin already having generated quite a lot of value for me. I took the Conmon, the cannons, the computers and the modern infantry for cheaper with him, so that's certainly some nice value for me. I keep some wars, an event, draw 2 colonization cards actually, and a war over culture. Wawrzyniec seeds, the economic progress is revealed, so that's a fine event for me, I would say. Also, I would say the timing is fine, because Martin Pecheur might have gotten a lot more out of this event if it would have been revealed after he has gone for his oil upgrades. Wawrzyniec, with the help of those resources, maybe doesn't suffer too much from losing the resources that I let him pay to Grozz. Can finish the Gremlin now relatively easily, can build some more units, builds a cavalryman, takes the multimedia, and he actually reveals the Hussars tactic here, making it that he isn't the weakest any longer. Martin Pecheur went for the selective breeding at the turn before, but is now still willing to go for the mechanized agriculture now that a copy is still available for him for 1 civil action. So with that, maybe he shouldn't have gone for it, but who knows, if he wouldn't have gone for it, maybe the mechanized agriculture would have been taken away, maybe not, because there's another copy coming, but probably it would have been just too big of a risk. But he is now still willing to go for that, and is going for some very big James Watt action here, goes for 1 farm upgrade, takes the democracy, which he sadly is also getting, giving him a boost in his civil actions, allowing him to invest all of his science very nicely, and then he can still go for 1 oil upgrade at the next turn, maybe go for all of the other upgrades, and then he has some enormously big economy to work with. And I mean, I said it early on, it for him depends a little bit on what cards he is getting. I do think he is getting some very strong cards here, early age 3, mechanized agriculture, oil, and the democracy, and that might put him in a position where he has maybe the biggest potential here. But he has only 3 military actions, maybe he could be somewhat in danger from the military, and might still also need to find a way to convert that economy into culture. Got seeds, and there's actually a colony revealed. I have just drawn those 2 colonization cards at the turn before, and I thought, why not bid a unit for that? I think I wasn't willing to bid more, but for 1 unit, getting those 2 yellow tokens, which might make my irrigations quite a bit worth more, I thought I will just go for that. Especially we will also see that the science is also quite helpful for me. So I win it for a knight. I was happy to see it. Grozz has a lot of resources to work with after the economic progress in the international negotiations, and he decides to invest those into the Eiffel Tower, which I think is a good call by him. Maybe he could have gone also into mechanized agriculture, but he doesn't have the most population, so investing into a wonder is quite fine. And before he finished the Eiffel Tower, that worker was unhappy, so it wasn't easily possible for him to go for multimedia or something. So I think the Eiffel Tower, quite a good call by him here. Takes the mechanized agriculture at least in hand, and also takes spear in hand, but skips the multimedia. Builds the knights to get out of corruption. Now it is my turn. I think, do I decide to push here? I think not, because I will improve the popularization of science here, and I also won't have any unhappy phase after my turn, so there are a lot of events that I will improve during this turn, so I just skipped my politics phase. And thanks to the additional science from the developed territory too, I have now enough science to go for both engineering and opera, which is actually now quite nice for me. So I take the engineering for cheaper thanks to Darwin. I will develop it, I go for a computer upgrade, I will build a knight to get stronger, to not be the weakest. I also will reveal the classic army tactic using the free military action as long as I have it. I thought that at the next turn I might just want to go for modern infantry and for 2 upgrades, so if I go for those upgrades at the next turn with now already having revealed the tactic, I will again get 3 draws at the next turn, which is nice. And also I thought I can now reveal the tactic because Grozz of course could profit from it, but I also thought he might have a tactic like Napoleonic army with having committed to the knights earlier on. And for Marta Pescher and Wawrzyniec it could be somewhat helpful, but Wawrzyniec has revealed the hussars tactic, and with that I thought it's maybe just fine to reveal it now, and also I get 1 additional strength which could be relevant potentially. And then I also thought I kinda should take the air forces here. I don't have the most population, and just being able to go for modern infantry and then 1 air force puts me at a very solid amount of strength. Who knows, maybe could even allow me to go for war potentially, even though I thought that with my low population probably I don't want to go for war, or maybe it could be difficult to pull one off. But again, I use Darwin to take 2 technologies for cheaper here, and then with the remaining 2 civil actions, it was not completely clear. I could just increase my population to get out of corruption, and then there is maybe 1 card in the row that could be very interesting to take. That's the multimedia, because it could prepare me for flaming and could just give me some more options to increase my culture production. It's the 2nd copy. If I don't take it now, it will be gone. But at the end I thought it's probably better to just get stuff and production gone more quickly now. Maybe I can just build a bunch of operas. I have computers already for some strong science production, and with that I just develop the opera, build 1, get out of corruption, have my happy phases fixed, and be at 7 culture production, so that after my turn I'm at 38, and after Grozz I will be the player with the 2nd most culture here. I could have played it greedily, maybe not gone for the air forces, maybe tried something with the internet, but I think not taking the air forces here is just a bit too greedy. It means, however, that there are not the most wonders left, only fast food chains in International Red Cross. Maybe the Empire State Building could still be in the row for me, but with Marta Pescher going for that very big James Watt economy, it could be that the Empire State Building is unrealistic to score me a lot of points anyway. I was a bit worried here, because if you're paying close attention, then you might notice that I'm actually in danger of an aggression here. If Grozz just tries out an aggression, I would actually get hit by it right now. But he doesn't have the most military action, so I thought hopefully he will just not try it. But I just used some defense cards, so there is certainly a bit of a risk here. Wawrzyniec seeds, the politics of strength is revealed. Marta Pescher misses out on some draws, while Grozz gets a lot of additional draws. Wawrzyniec this turn goes for the multimedia, a bit greedy maybe, but also giving him a very big boost and maybe a risk that he needs to take at that point. He takes the urban growth, the military build-up, and the air forces, and with getting all of those cards, it's probably justified to invest into that multimedia. Marta Pescher also takes the 2nd copy of multimedia, builds 1, upgrades the religion, and upgrades all of the things with James Watt, so yeah, he's building up something very strong here. Doesn't have the civil actions to take a wonder, but yeah, his production and his civil actions and everything is looking very strong right now. He copies the hussars tactic to not be the weakest after his turn. Grozz seeds, opens the independence declaration, and now after Wawrzyniec had a little bit of a break with getting hit by stuff from the event deck, now he gets a very big blow again. That will be a very big setback for him. He loses the vast territory too, losing 4 yellow tokens and also a bunch of resources with the Suez Canal that he would have scored until the end of the game. So that's certainly very rough for him, especially he will immediately have some very big uprising issues. So yeah, that will hit him very heavily here. And a bit unfortunate timing for him, as he was not the weakest for a while now also. Grozz this turn goes for the mechanized agriculture, takes the internet. With Pierre, there's the potential to make the internet relatively big, especially if he still gets a copy of professional sports, and then he takes a copy of reserves. Now it is my turn. And this turn I'm not sure if I'm going for the right thing. First of all, I see the impact of variety, which I thought should end up being fine for me, and I just wanted to get some impacts in there. The event revealed is the popularization of science, so I knew that it might be, or that it is one of the last two events. I get the most culture out of it, and a significant culture boost compared to Grozz. And in this turn, which I think is fine, I just start going for modern infantry, going for those two upgrades, getting stronger without missing out on any draws, maybe being a little bit threatening at least, so that my opponents have to be a bit careful. I have the air forces in hand. Probably it's not too difficult for them to make sure that they are safe, but at least maybe they have to be a little bit careful here. And now I have 6 civil actions left. And maybe, I'm not sure, but maybe I should just consider taking the fast food chains here. It would cost all of my civil actions, it would be very costly, but it likely will be taken away. Maybe rather by Martin Pêcheur, but I think he will very likely take it. And then there's only the Red Cross left. I don't have the most food, and just getting a wonder might be strong. The fast food chains aren't really that strong for me though, so that's why I thought it's maybe not worth it, but it still will give me some points. I don't have the most population, so being able to get some points at the end from a wonder is nice for me. The Empire State Building, as said, with Martin Pêcheur's insane production, will be difficult to make very big, and maybe I could think about it, but I would also miss out on some very interesting cards, so I think it is maybe a fine decision at the end, but I have to expect now that either I get the Red Cross, which will be difficult to pull off, or maybe even just no wonder at all, which will make it maybe rough, because Grozz has the internet, which he can maybe make significantly strong. Martin Pêcheur will have the fast food chains. I won't have any wonders, so also maybe partly because of denial reasons I could consider the fast food chains. The thing is, Martin Pêcheur is nicely set up for both fast food chains and Red Cross, so the denial reasons are maybe not really there, because if I take the fast food chains away from him, the Red Cross might just be revealed. And it was also one hope that I was having, thinking that if the Red Cross is also revealed before his next turn, which is maybe not that likely but possible, maybe he will rather go for the Red Cross instead of the fast food chains. And so I decide against just taking the fast food chains here. Instead I take some useful cards, and also I will build another opera, so that scores me some points immediately. And I will then take Marlene Dietrich, a leader that I would miss out on. Of course I could wait for Fleming or Churchill, but Marlene Dietrich will just be very useful, potentially also for the military. Take the satellites, that will be helpful for a lot of impacts, also for the impact of variety that I have already seeded. Then I take democracy and the urban growth, so just a lot of cards that could end up being useful. Maybe at some point I will have enough science to just develop the democracy. Maybe at the last turn, for example. Maybe I can then just build 4 operas with Marlene, just leading something. So with that I thought maybe it's fine here to miss out on the fast food chains, but it could mean that I will end up either with no wonder or with a somewhat awkward Red Cross. I draw some cards here. The impact of strength could be interesting. I'm playing in last position. I have the air forces, and also I'm getting the military alliance here, making me even stronger. Wawrzyniec has to disband some stuff. He lost the vast territory too. Disbands 2 warriors, at least he doesn't really need those with having the Hussars tactic, but still it's annoying. He builds another multimedia and a team sport, somewhat risky, but he has the Minchi Castle. Maybe he figured that he is somewhat safe with also having the military build up in hand and with getting the strategy. And then he also takes the movies, maybe securing himself that copy, as the leader that he's probably looking for at this point is Fleming. The fast food chains drop to the 1 civil action area for Martin. There's no Red Cross in the row, so with that I really kind of expected him to take the fast food chains. Now the prosperity is revealed. There were... I at my last turn could have elected Marlene Dietrich already. I'm not certain, but I think I might have had knowledge about iconoclasm. I think I have drawn it earlier on. So the prosperity was basically the only reason to elect her, and I didn't have knowledge about that event, so I decided against it, as I might still have a chance to save civil actions with Darwin at the next turn, and as both of those leaders would score me the same amount of culture. But if I would have, of course, known that the prosperity is on top, then I would have, of course, really liked to elect Marlene, either to get one more population or to maybe make a Red Cross more realistic. And maybe with the Red Cross potentially being the wonder that I expect getting, maybe I should have gambled around the prosperity and just elected Marlene, but maybe then I would miss out on the technology at the next turn. So I do think it was a fine call, but sadly, with the cards, with the prosperity, it turned out to be the wrong decision in hindsight. But for sure, just make sure to be safe. He's somewhat limited with his military actions, and no, I think it's a fine call by him, and then he goes for the fast food chains. Now it's Grozz's turn, he seeds despite being the weakest, and there's also no strength event revealed, instead the autonomous territory, which I wasn't willing to bid more than one unit on, as I'm relatively low on units, and Grozz at the end is able to win it for a swordsman and one card, which is extremely strong, gets even more civil and military actions, scores 4 science interestingly, but he doesn't have the most, so it looks like a fine thing to score with the territory. He goes for the cannons, builds 1, builds 2, going up to 41 strength. He indeed has the Napoleonic army tactic, plays the reserves for food, increases his population an additional time, switches to Pierre, builds 2 arenas, going up to 13 cultural production, will get the Olympic Games soon, and then takes the efficient upgrade and plays the reserves for resources. Now it is my turn. I don't have a lot of politics phases left, and I then made the decision to already commit to the impact of strength here, which certainly could backfire. I could have also just ceded Ravages of Time for maybe 2 culture, and maybe I could destroy Universitas at the end. But I thought that my opponents don't necessarily will build a lot of strength, as they have some maybe better options. Grozz might go for some arena upgrades, so I have to be careful. Also, I have to be careful because I will lose 4 strength from the promise of military protection. But I will get the satellites, I have the air forces, I have Marlene. It's a strong impact. I have some time to prepare for it, so I just decided to commit to it already, in case I draw more playable impacts, and then I have enough politics phases left to get them into the deck. But there is at least a chance that I will only get one more draw step. Maybe I could have also waited with ceding the impact of strength here. And now, then it's my turn. The strategic territory is revealed again. With my low food production, I wasn't willing to bid more than 1 unit. Sadly, Grozz again is winning a colony for just a swordsman, so he is really getting some strong colonies here, and he didn't really need the swordsman for his tactics, so he gets a lot of draws here, already won the politics of strength. This turn, I wasn't completely certain what I should do. I, at the end, ended up going for movies and for some upgrades, getting me out of corruption, increasing my culture production, and spending some actions without having to increase my population, because after going for those upgrades, I will now just grab a copy of reserves for 3. I will also elect Marlene, as there's a chance that the age will end before my next turn. I will grab the reserves, and that gives me a potentially bigger Red Cross. If the Red Cross should drop down to the 2 civil action area, the 1 civil action area is unrealistic. In case it should drop there, I could actually just take and finish it, but that's maybe unrealistic. But if it drops in the 2 civil action area, which is more possible, I could at least build 4 steps thanks to the reserves. We see now that missing out on the food from the prosperity was somewhat painful, but no, then I could have, without having to play the reserves for food, I could have just maybe taken the Red Cross and built 4 stages, even if it's in the 3 civil action area. Now, if it's in the 3 civil action area, I sadly can only build 3 steps of it. And I was thinking that it is good here to prepare for the Red Cross, because ideally, if I should manage to build 4 stages of it, then Wawrzyniec will likely be the player completing it, and he is then, unless he gets the Red Cross now, but of course I'm hoping that that won't be the case, and it would also be quite expensive for him and wouldn't bring him that many benefits. So with him being the player without a wonder and also being a bit behind in culture, I was hoping that I will rather compete with Grozz and Martha Pêcheur. if I get a red Grozz, and especially if I get 4 stages of it, and then it's quite nice for me that he will be the player completing it, so that I get basically full 4 stages against Mortar Pêcheur and Grozz, plus the 6 colonies. So basically against Mortar Pêcheur and Grozz I'm getting a value of like 30 culture, and that's certainly not bad. So I was thinking that could be worthwhile. Maybe I should actually play it differently here, because the thing is that I need to use a civil action to play the reserve. So as said, if the red Grozz is in the 3 civil action area, I can only build 3 steps. Maybe, and it would be somewhat costly, and maybe I have to be a bit careful also, but I think I'm not that much in danger militarily. Maybe I would need to check that again, but Grozz has low military actions, Mortar Pêcheur is Gandhi, Wawrzyniec is behind in strength. I don't think I have to be concerned about strength here. Maybe, and I don't think I considered that during the game, I should have actually destroyed a mine here and built a 3rd farm. Even an HA farm would be enough in case I don't want to invest more resources. That could also be helpful for something like Impact of Balance, which maybe could have been ceded by one of my opponents, Impact of Agriculture, but of course I sacrifice Impact of Industry. And that would give me additional food that doesn't require a civil action at the next turn, making it that I can take and build 4 steps of the red Grozz, even if it's in the 3 civil action area. And maybe I should have done that actually. Maybe I didn't really see that option, but maybe I should have seen it, and just instead of taking one of those reserves, maybe destroying a mine, building a farm, and then making sure that I can get a red Grozz that hopefully will score me that 30 culture against Mortar Pêcheur and Grozz. I get 1 impact. Sadly, it's not really a great one, especially if I should end up going for red Grozz. Red Grozz isn't in the row yet, which at least means that Wawrzyniec can't go for it. He might have not done it anyway, I don't know if, to be honest. Maybe he would have taken it. So maybe it's good that it isn't revealed yet, or it could be bad, because it could mean that it will be later on the deck, but I was hoping that it will be revealed soon now. Wawrzyniec switches to Fleming, isn't willing to do the investment into movies yet. Maybe he has to be a bit careful. Takes the endowment and the reserves. Mortar Pêcheur seeds. Opens the Impact of Variety that was seeded in by me. I haven't had a chance to go for air forces or satellites yet, meaning that sadly it is actually quite a strong impact for Grozz, but with 3 culture for seeding, maybe it was overall still worth it for me. Mortar Pêcheur goes for 2 computer upgrades, or for 1 upgrade, builds a multimedia, and builds a mechanized agriculture. And that play from him just screams Impact of Balance, because he has now plus 15 production and everything, thanks to going for computers, multimedia, and thanks to building that additional farm. So I thought it's very likely that the Impact of Balance is in there, and maybe it's even coming already very soon, with him making sure to already have that built now. And of course, with building even more stuff, his fast food chains also gets even bigger. And he's just enough food to get 2 more population out at the next turn, can maybe build 2 farms or mines and then finish the fast food chains. Grozz offers the international tourism to me. I accept. It was not a clear call, because Grozz will get 1 or 2 more culture than I do, likely. And it might actually be that we are the closest here, because if there's indeed the Impact of Balance in there, then Mortar Pêcheur has already a big jump with that. He's generally probably the best prepared for impacts, and so I thought maybe it could be hard finishing before him, but maybe it could be possible finishing before Grozz. Maybe I shouldn't give him additional points here. But yeah, at the end I just took the additional culture, because I will still get a significant amount of culture against Mortar Pêcheur and Wawrzyniec. It could just also backfire very heavily. I don't know at this point if I get the red Grozz or not. Grozz could take maybe only a few cards from the row. It's unlikely maybe. Can't do that much with the civil actions, but he can go for a bunch of professional sports upgrades. And maybe he does an NDH, and then it could be that red Grozz stays in the deck. But it's unlikely. I might get it, but I get only 3 stages of it, unless Grozz takes a lot of cards, meaning that it's won't end up being that big. So Grozz will now go for another alchemy, takes the reserves, the professional sports, goes for 2 upgrades, doesn't use the efficient upgrade yet, so that he gets out of corruption. The next turn can go for another free upgrade and finish the internet, which sadly also gives him quite a lot of strength for the Impact of Strength. Now it is my turn. I try to offer a peace treaty to Wawrzyniec, but sadly he rejects, probably understandably so. And then I still decide to just take the Red Cross and build 3 stages of it. We can see now that it could have been just very strong having built it farm, and maybe the reserves will still allow me to do something at the next turn, but yeah, probably the additional step would have been worth a lot here. So that was probably a misplay on my part, and I still go for the Red Cross, because now at least Grozz is the player still, who probably doesn't get a step of the Red Cross, so I still get 24 culture basically against him, with the 6 colonies that are in play, and it's still a significant amount of points, and yeah, I think I can't do anything better than that, so I just take and build the stages of the Red Cross here. Sadly it stayed that far in the deck, but I could have had a way to play around it, so yeah, that's just, I get punished for that here. Sadly, also the age ending means, of course, that I get no new draws, so I can't really play any more impacts in. Wawrzyniec seeds an impact into the deck. The impact of government is revealed, which is best for Wawrzyniec and not that great for me. He will play the endowment for 6 points, plays the reserves, gets a new population, builds a theater, has enough food left to build a step of the Red Cross, plays the military build-up, takes and develops the tanks, destroys one thing, and in order to build a tank, go for 2 upgrades, making him a bit stronger. Marta Pêcheur seeds, opens the impact of balance, so that one is indeed in there, and it's giving him plus 30, so that's really big for him. Sadly not that great for me. And he will now go for the military theory, builds a step of the Red Cross, builds a knight to get a bit stronger, builds a cavalryman, and you might for a moment think, wait, he can't finish the fast food chains any longer, but what he can do is taking that engineering genius, using it with the Harvard College, and then still finishing the fast food chain, so that's quite nice. And yeah, with that he got stronger than Wawrzyniec, getting another Hussars tactic going, and still gets the 25 points fast food chains. Grozz doesn't see it, increases his population, upgrades an arena, plays the reserves for resources, builds a mine. Could be a big sign that impact of industry is actually in there. And then he completes the internet also for 25 points. So basically, yeah, both of my opponents finished their wonder for 25 points, and then he ends his turn. And I said that I probably can't really do anything with my last politics phase, but it is not completely true. I find a way here to sneak in a little bit of culture actually, because I offer the peace treaty to Marta Pêcheur. And as you can see, he accepts it. Why does he accept it? I'm getting a culture and he doesn't. The thing is that the 1 culture reduction here makes the difference between him being in front of Grozz for the impact of culture or not. Probably he didn't see the impact of culture, but Wawrzyniec has pushed an impact. He certainly could have pushed it. I could have pushed it with now being able to improve my culture reduction by quite a bit. So there's a chance that it might be in there. And if it is in there, it could make quite a big difference. So it's probably not a bad deal to sacrifice 1 culture in order to get a 10 culture swing against Grozz and a plus 5 culture against Wawrzyniec and me. And with that, I offered it to him because also for me, the impact of culture is maybe one way how I could hope to finish before Grozz. I was not the most optimistic, but if Wawrzyniec has seeded the impact of culture in actually, I this turn will be able to compete for the impact of strength while still making it that I have the biggest culture reduction at the end of my turn. And with being able to achieve that, the impact of culture would give me now plus 15 against Grozz, instead only plus 10. And with me thinking that I have bigger chances to catch Grozz, who is now already 10 points behind Marta Pêcheur, sadly is better prepared for the impact of strength. And with that, that could not only give me a culture that pack, but also bring me closer to an opponent where I thought that I have the best chances to catch that opponent. So yeah, that was an interesting pact offer in my last turn. Maybe I should have already offered it at the turn before to Marta Pêcheur, not to Wawrzyniec. Maybe I could have already gotten a culture more out of it, but maybe he wouldn't have accepted it at the turn before. Then, I this turn had to think about how do I want to win the impact of strength. There are two ways. I could either develop the air forces, which sadly means that I'm missing one science for the democracy, or I can just build more units, which then means I have to destroy more stuff, but I can develop the democracy. And I can actually win the impact of strength with building some units and still have enough resources to go for 2 more movies. And with that, the thing was clear for me that I will go for the destruction line. It could cost me quite a lot of points for some impacts. I will destroy a lot of mines. Grozz just indicated that impact of industry might be in there, maybe also impact of harmony. But yeah, it just gives me a lot of points going for it like this, and I just thought it is worthwhile. So I go for the democracy, build a modern infantry, build a knight, build another modern infantry, completing the tactic. Oh, actually, I think I only go for 1 more movie, so that I misremembered that. Did I have the option to build another knight instead of the modern infantry in order to go for another movie? I don't think I have the civil action for that, to be honest. So I go for only 1 more movie, so the democracy doesn't make that big of a difference, so maybe I could have gone for less destruction here. But I think without the democracy it was somewhat difficult to still win the impact of culture. I would need to destroy 1 more thing anyway then to go for religion to have more cultural production in Wawrzyniec, I think. Or maybe that wasn't even in... yeah, I wouldn't have the democracy, so... yeah, I at the end decided to go for more destruction, have more safe culture reduction, and the impact of industry and harmony would be bad impacts for me anyway. Maybe I have to hope anyway that those aren't in there. But yeah, those could of course cost me now. I can go for the satellites, and then I play the reserves, and actually I think I make a mistake here. Because I built a knight earlier on, but I have now 7 resources left. I could have also built another modern infantry. I would of course then lose a tactic if I built instead of the knight a modern infantry. I would lose 2 strength from the knight and 8 strength from the tactic, but I would gain 5, so I would only lose 5 strength, and that would still be just enough to be the strongest here, but would give me plus 2 points for the impact of competition. So I do actually a small mistake here that could potentially cost me some points if the impact of competition is in there. And then before the final impacts, we can see that Martin Pêcheur has a 10 culture lead to Grozz, he has a 10 culture lead to me. Wawrzyniec is quite a bit behind. I didn't have the biggest hopes to overtake Grozz or Martin Pêcheur, but if there is indeed an impact of culture in there, it could certainly be possible. But I also would need a bit of luck to not get punished by my big mine destruction here. The first impact is sadly the impact of industry, so I am scoring 0 in that. The next impact is the impact of harmony, so yeah, sadly my mine destruction line gets heavily punished here. And maybe I should have gone for the Air Force play instead, with both of those impacts being in there. But even then the impacts wouldn't be that great for me. I do get the impact of strength. And there is actually the impact of cultures. I am gaining plus 15 points in Grozz. So the peace treaty makes also for Martin Pêcheur now a very big difference. Then we have the impact of wonders, which is actually another good impact for me. So I am getting closer, but I'm still quite a bit behind. And the last impact is the impact of architecture, another very solid one for me. So that I'm actually only 10 points behind Grozz. To be honest, I didn't calculate if I would have played my last turn differently, if there would have been a chance to maybe overtake Grozz if I played differently, if I maybe go for less destruction, but I don't even destroy it that much less, only 1 mine less. So I would get it plus 4 from impact of industry, plus 4 from impact of harmony, but I would miss out on the 3 culture from democracy, but I would gain 1 culture from the religion that I would build at this point, so that I have more culture than Wawrzyniec. But yeah, even then I would be behind Grozz, so it didn't make a difference, and also the impact of competition wasn't there. And also for Martin Pêcheur at the end, the peace treaty didn't make the difference between winning or not, but it would have been close otherwise. Otherwise, Grozz actually would have been only 2 points behind Martin Pêcheur. Yeah, so sadly only a third place at the end. At times I had hopes for an even better finish going into H3 with my big production and then going for those early computers. I thought maybe that's actually not looking bad. But sadly, I didn't get the best chance to take a wonder. I could have prepared myself for the red cross better. Maybe I could have just taken the fast food chains, but I think it was probably correct to not take it, as I at the end somehow managed to do something with the red cross, and I could have managed to build 4 stages if I would have prepared myself properly. With building the additional farm, I actually would have also scored better in the impact of balance, and with the additional step, who knows, maybe it could have gotten very close here. Maybe I would have also missed some resources, but I had 7 at the end lying around, so the reserves that I took and now played for resources I think didn't do that much. So maybe that could have actually been enough, but it still could have been somewhat close. And yeah, with that, we are at the end of the game. I hope it was an interesting game for you to watch. I will also certainly show the 3-player game and maybe also the 2-player game from the tournament. Of course, we are also still waiting for the conclusion of the International Championship season. And yeah, with that, there should be some interesting games to come. And with that, I say thanks for watching, have a nice time, and see you in the next video.